We're diving into something that's, well, profoundly intimate and incredibly powerful. We're talking about the invisible architecture of your own mind. Have you ever caught yourself just completely lost in an inner narrative, like replaying a fear, a doubt, or some random anxiety over and over again? We usually treat our thoughts like they're just passing clouds, right? Completely harmless, totally temporary. But what if that invisible inner narrative actually carries some serious, tangible weight? What if those looping thoughts are doing way more than just killing time or ruining your mood? Let the sheer magnitude of that idea sink in for a second. What if your thoughts were physically changing your brain? Think about it. Every single time you catch yourself repeating a familiar inner phrase, something like, I'm just not good enough, or my life is a mess, or I always mess this up, your brain is actually listening. It's paying really, really close attention to that story.
And I want to be absolutely crystal clear about this. We're not talking metaphorically here. This isn't some spiritual concept. It is happening literally. The science is in, and it shows us that repeated thinking patterns don't just float away into the ether. They actively strengthen your neural pathways. You are literally carving physical grooves into your nervous system. The more you think negatively, the easier that negative thinking gets, until one day, anxiety just feels automatic. Fear feels completely natural. And peace? Well, peace starts to feel totally unfamiliar. And honestly, the wildest part is that most of us have no idea we're actively programming ourselves like this.
So let's unpack the revolutionary scientific concept behind all of this: neuroplasticity. This is your brain's amazing ability to physically change itself based on your experiences, behaviors, emotions, and, yes, your thoughts. For decades, scientists actually thought the adult brain was basically fixed. Like once you grew up, your brain structure was pretty much set in stone. But modern neuroscience totally flipped that on its head. Your brain is not fixed at all. It's constantly adapting, constantly molding itself. Every repeated thought you have is actively strengthening specific neural pathways. Think of your brain like a really dense forest. The very first time you try to walk through thick, untrampled grass, man, it is tough. It takes a ton of effort to push through. You're fighting weeds, maybe swatting away some bugs. But if you walk that exact same path through the forest every single day, eventually a super clear trail forms. The grass gets beaten down, the path widens out, and walking that route becomes completely automatic and completely effortless. Well, your brain works the exact same way. Those repeated thoughts, they turn into massive, wide-open mental highways. And that brings us to a super famous, totally foundational principle in neuroscience. Neurons that fire together, wire together. When you repeatedly think fearful, angry, or self-critical thoughts, those specific neural circuits get stronger and way faster. Over time, your brain just defaults to them automatically, simply because it's the path of least resistance. The tragic result here? Negative thinking eventually stops being something you do. It actually starts becoming who you are. So the absolute crucial thing to understand is what happens when the system goes into overdrive. Scientists call this process rumination. Basically, rumination is when you repeatedly replay negative emotions, past memories, fears, or even completely imagined future problems. And here is the massive catch. Your brain cannot fully tell the difference between a real, immediate danger and a vividly imagined one. So you could be sitting safely on your couch, but if you're constantly thinking, what if I fail, or what if they reject me, your brain treats that repetitive thought loop like you're practicing for actual survival. Let's map out exactly how this turns into a real biological chain reaction. Step 1. You have a repeated negative thought. Step 2, because your brain can't distinguish between that thought and reality, boom, your stress response is activated. Step 3, this triggers the release of cortisol, which is your body's main stress hormone. Now, short bursts of cortisol, totally fine, completely normal. But chronic negative thinking creates chronic stress activation. And that brings us to step 4, actual alteration of your brain structure. Over time, this constant cortisol wash actively changes critical regions of your brain. Just look at the intense contrast happening here. Think about your emotional brain, specifically the amygdala, your brain's fear center. Repeated negativity makes this area hyperactive. It essentially turns into a broken car alarm, detecting threats even when absolutely none exist, trapping your whole nervous system in survival mode. Then, look at the rational brain, the prefrontal cortex. This is the boss. It handles logical decision-making, focus, and emotional control. But chronic stress literally weakens this region. So while your emotional reactivity is shooting through the roof, your ability to logically regulate those emotions is tanking. It's a terrifying cycle, right? The emotional brain basically hijacks the logical brain. You end up more impulsive, overwhelmed, and trapped in these negative patterns without really even knowing why. And unfortunately, the structural damage doesn't even stop there. The hippocampus, which is the area of your brain deeply involved in memory and learning, is also right in the crosshairs. Long-term stress and those elevated cortisol levels from your looping negative thoughts can severely mess with hippocampal function. So what does that mean for you? It means chronic negativity doesn't just put you in a lousy mood. It physically damages your brain's ability to focus, to learn new things, and to hold on to memories. Psychologically speaking, all this conditioning creates something called negativity bias. Once your brain is structurally wired for negativity, it starts filtering your reality completely differently. You start noticing your failures way more than your successes. Criticism sounds so much louder than compliments. You see threats everywhere instead of opportunities. Heck, even genuinely positive experiences become incredibly hard to actually feel. It's exactly like walking around wearing invisible dark glasses. The actual world around you hasn't changed one bit, but your brain's interpretation of that world, it's been completely distorted. And of course, these negative loops don't politely stay confined to your head. Your thoughts become chemistry, and that chemistry becomes biology, which eventually turns into destructive bodily illness. We're talking poor sleep, crushing fatigue, digestive issues, increased inflammation, a totally weakened immune system, constant muscle tension, and headaches. You are literally making your physical body sick strictly through the invisible architecture of your thoughts. And honestly, this is exactly why two totally different people can go through the exact same external situation, but react in completely opposite ways. It's all because their nervous systems have been conditioned differently over the years. Faced with the exact same event, one brain, conditioned with healthy, positive pathways, sees a challenge that can be overcome. But another brain, one that's been conditioned by years of rumination and a hyperactive amygdala, well, that brain sees an absolute, unmitigated catastrophe. So, let's move into the solution: rewiring your neural pathways. Now, here is the really good news. The exact same biological mechanism that created those negative loops in the first place, you can use it to destroy them. The secret ingredient here is repetition. Your brain can absolutely change again. But listen to me, healing requires repetition, not motivation, not just wishful thinking. Just like repetition built those deeply carved negative highways in the forest of your mind, only conscious, repeated action can weaken those old neural pathways and carve out new, healthy ones. Every single time you catch and interrupt a negative thought loop, you are physically weakening that toxic pathway. So how do we actually do this in real life? We do it through brain rewiring practices. Things like meditation, mindfulness, gratitude, journaling, cognitive reframing, positive visualization, and breathwork. And hey, I know some of these might sound like trendy wellness buzzwords, but they actually have measurable neurological effects. For instance, science shows that a regular meditation practice measurably shrinks that hyperactive amygdala and significantly boosts your emotional regulation. Mindfulness literally trains your brain to just observe a thought without automatically running down that negative highway and getting tracked. I do want to point out that the true objective here is awareness. We are not talking about forced or toxic positivity. You definitely don't need to fake happiness or pretend that bad things don't exist in the world. You just need to become aware of your negative loops. Because once you're truly aware of them, you stop unconsciously feeding them. You stop walking down that overgrown, thorny path. And slowly but surely, your brain begins rewiring itself all over again.
I really want you to absorb this message today. If you repeat darkness long enough, sure, the brain adapts to darkness. But if you consciously practice new patterns, new perspectives, and new beliefs, the brain adapts to healing too. You are not permanently broken. You are simply patterned. And thanks to the incredible, literal reality of neuroplasticity, your patterns can change, one single thought at a time.
We've seen today exactly how your inner narrative physically shapes the very architecture of your mind. Your brain is always listening, right? Always ready to wire together whatever you fire together. So I want to leave you with a final, vital question to really reflect on. The mind you feed daily becomes the reality you live in. So what are you feeding yours?
Please like, share, comment, and subscribe this channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.